So hello and welcome to lesson 2 of our Ielts Writing Band 7 Plus Challenge. My name is Chris. You probably know me already if you did lesson 1. Well done to all of the people who completed lesson 1, and especially well done to the people who completed the first challenge. So welcome to lesson 2. Let's have a look at what we're going to do on this 5-day challenge. So day 1, we looked at strategy and structure. We started you off on a very basic level. Today we're going to look at idea generation, how to think of relevant, specific ideas. Tomorrow, introduction. Next day, main body paragraphs, and then the final day, conclusion. So we're taking you from the strategy and structure to like the planning stage, all the way up to the conclusion, so that by the end of day 5, you will be very confident that you can write a band 7, 8, or even 9 IELTS writing task 2 opinion essay. So what are we specifically looking at today? We're going to look at question analysis. So this is the very first thing that you should be doing when you open up your paper. When you're sitting there in the test, you need to understand how to analyze the question. Then we're going to look at the problem with other methods of idea generation. Specifically, we're going to look at why brainstorming is really a bad idea. And then we're going to look at my method, my easy method that will allow you to think of really good ideas really quickly in the test. And then finally, we're going to give you your task at the end, your challenge. So just to remind you, there are 5 different types of questions on the task 2 paper. We are only looking at opinion essays today. All right, we're not going to look at the other 4. We discussed that in lesson 1, but basically I want to do opinion essays properly in this 5-day challenge. And then if you want to take things to the next level and do the other ones, there'll be an opportunity for you to do that. But in this 5-day challenge, we're just looking at opinion essays. Okay, so when you open up your test, when you open up your writing paper, when you're sitting there on test day, and you read the question, the very first thing you need to do is you need to analyze the question. You need to understand the question fully before you even start thinking of ideas. And there's 3 stages to question analysis. The first stage is, what is the general topic are they talking about? What are they talking about? Health, technology, the environment, traffic, government, crime? What are these general topics that they are talking about? Now, you're not going to write about the general topic, but it is very important that you understand what it is. And then you get into what are the specific things that they want me to talk about. And we're going to look at examples, and this will become much clearer when we look at an example. And finally, we need to look at the instruction words. All right, what do the examiners actually want us to do? So if we look at this question, so the first thing we're going to think about is, what is the general topic? So the general topic here is education. Okay, so we're talking about the use of mobile phones by teenagers in school. All right, so we know what the general topic is about, but we're not going to write everything we know about mobile phones or everything we know about education. That wouldn't be answering the question. So when we understand what the topic is, we need to look at the specific keywords. So we're specifically talking about teenagers, okay? That is important because we're not talking about adults. We're not talking about primary school children. We're talking specifically about teenagers. And we're specifically talking about teenagers in school, all right? So we're not talking about them at the weekends or after school or anything like that. We're specifically talking about teenagers in school using mobile phones. And should they be allowed? All right, so we're answering that specific question. Should teenagers be allowed to use mobile phones in school? All right, and that is the specific question that they want you to answer. So when we have looked at these keywords and we've understood what they mean, next we might be thinking about this, instruction words. All right, so the instruction words are here. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So the instruction words could be discuss both views, what are the problems and solutions, what are the advantages and disadvantages. The instruction words here are to what extent do you agree or disagree. So you must state very clearly whether you agree or whether you disagree. All right, if you don't do that, you haven't answered the question. Now, many of you might be looking at this and think, Like, this is way too much. We don't have to think about it in this, this deeply. This is going to take me lots of time. Believe me, whenever you start to use this technique for every single task 2 question, you start to do it in 30 seconds, all right? It will take you a long time to do it in the beginning because it's new, but then it will just become really, really fast, all right? It'll just be like clicking your fingers, be just really fast to think about what's the general topic, what's a specific question, and what are the instructions, all right? So then when you've done that, you can move on to idea generation. So the first thing I want to talk about idea generation is lots of students talk to me and they ask me, how am I supposed to answer this question? I know nothing about this topic, all right? I know absolutely nothing about it. You do, all right? Stop being so dramatic. A lot of people I talk to who say this are like, oh my God, I know nothing, I'm going to fail. They're very, very dramatic people. If you stop thinking so emotionally and start thinking logically and simply about this, you will realize that you do know a lot about these different topics. The topics are things like education. You have been to school. You know a little bit about education. Technology. You own a mobile phone. You use a computer every single day. You probably read or talk about technology all the time. You do not need to have a very, very in-depth knowledge of the general topic. You just need a basic knowledge of it. And these questions that when people look at the question and think, oh my God, I don't know anything about that topic, they're normally fake questions. If you look at real IELTS questions, so if you look at the Cambridge IELTS books, or you look at real questions that the British Council will give you or IDP will give you, they are not very difficult, all right? They are designed so that anybody with a basic knowledge, a basic education, will be able to do them. And the examiners are not expecting expert content. They just want you to know if you can communicate in English. So if there's a question about health, they don't expect you to be a doctor. I know a lot of doctors are in here and a lot of nurses are in here right now, but they don't require that level. If you're asking about technology, they don't expect a Mark Zuckerberg to answer the question or something like that. They just want a very, very basic knowledge of this. All right, so have faith in the knowledge that you already have. So next, brainstorming. All right, so if you ask 100 students and 100 IELTS teachers, how do you think of ideas? 99 of them will say brainstorming. All right, this is actually a terrible way to think of ideas. It's a complete waste of time, all right? It does not result in very good ideas, and it takes a huge amount of time to do. And most of your ideas are not specific. The whole thing about brainstorming is just think of as many ideas as possible. The ideas do not need to be relevant. The ideas do not need to be specific. It's just think of as many ideas. And that is a complete waste of time, A, and B, you're not thinking of ideas that are specific to the question, and those are the ideas that you need. And most of your ideas are not relevant, all right? So believe me, I know many of you firmly believe that brainstorming is a good idea. Try it my way, and I'll show you a much better way. So keep it simple. The most obvious ideas are normally the best ones. So this is something that I find a lot with doctors, actually. Doctors are some of obviously the most intelligent people in our society, but they tend not to do so well on the IELTS writing test. One of the things I established with a lot of my VIP students, a lot of them are doctors, was they were trying to think of really complex, complicated, advanced ideas. And they're very, very difficult to think of, they're difficult to explain, they're difficult to, you help support them with examples. The best ideas are the most obvious ones. Like, often when students read my sample essays, they'll say, but teacher, that's a really simple idea. Yes, those are the ideas that you should be thinking of. So try not to think of really complex ideas. Often the most obvious ones are the best. So the simplest, most straightforward ideas are the easiest to understand and the easiest to write about. So you do not want an idea that you are confused about, that is really difficult to write about, because if it's difficult to write about and you're not 100% sure about it, then it's going to be very difficult for the reader, the examiner, to understand it. There are no extra marks for amazing ideas. The only criteria are the ideas are relevant, they're specific to the question, they answer the question. There is not like a hierarchy of ideas where, one idea gets 5 points and another idea gets 1 point. That's not how it works. All right, there are no extra marks for good or amazing ideas. The simplest, most straightforward ideas are normally the best. So I've said that brainstorming is a complete waste of time. So Chris, tell us what your method is. So my method I call the direct method. So I came up with this method after years and years of teaching IELTS in the classroom, and I was really frustrated with the results that my students were getting, and it all came down to them not being able to think of relevant, specific ideas quickly. All right, they were spending too much time thinking of ideas, or they were thinking of ideas that weren't relevant or specific. So I tested this method, I developed it myself, and it had amazing results. So ask yourself direct, specific questions about the question. All right, so that might not be, you might not be able to understand what that means just yet. Let me explain it a little bit further. This will generate specific, relevant ideas in a very short amount of time. The first ideas you think of are normally the best. Okay, so a good idea is easy to understand, relevant to the question, and answers the specific question, and is easy to explain. Okay, so many of you might be thinking, what is a good idea? If it is easy to understand, if it is relevant to the question, if it answers the specific question and is easy to explain, then it's a good idea. So the direct method for opinion questions. Let's get into this in a little bit more detail. So if you agree with something, what are 2 reasons why someone would agree with this? All right, so you're asking yourself specific, direct questions. Okay, so if you choose the agree side, you just ask yourself the specific, direct question. What are 2 reasons why someone would agree with this? The first few reasons that you think of are normally the best ones. If you disagree, the question you would ask yourself is, what are 2 reasons why someone would disagree with this? Okay? Do not overcomplicate this, all right? Our goal is to get you to think of ideas in 2 minutes or less. Most of my VIP students, because I've taught them this and because I get them to practice it so much, they can think of ideas in 30 seconds or 1 minute, okay? My goal is to get you to think of good, relevant, specific ideas in 2 minutes or less. Like, don't overcomplicate this. So when I show this method to students, often people don't understand it because it is so simple. It is so obvious. And students are just like, oh, it should be more complicated than this. It is not. So for opinion questions, if you agree, ask yourself, what are 2 reasons why someone would agree with this? If you disagree, what are 2 reasons why someone would disagree with this? It is that simple. So, agree that teenagers should not be allowed to use mobile phones at school. Why? All right, so let's use this question that we've seen before. So, if you agree that teenagers should not be allowed to use mobile phones at school, why would someone think that? All right, just ask yourself that direct question. It's distracting. All right, they can't focus on their studies. Very simple, very obvious, very relevant, very specific. It answers the question. It's a good idea. Competition for the latest phone, so peer pressure and bullying. All right, so it might result in somebody getting teased or bullied because they don't have the latest phone. Okay, so that's another very simple, very specific idea. And there are 50 other ideas that could be relevant to that. All right, it's not like these are just the only 2 ideas that are correct. There are 100 different ideas you could use, but there are also 100 ideas that you can't use. So if you disagree that teenagers should not be allowed to use mobile phones at school, why would people think that? All right, think about it. Don't think about it personally. All right, your personal opinion doesn't matter. Think outside of the box. All right, why would someone disagree? Use them for educational purposes. So they might use Google, use Facebook, or not Facebook maybe, but a dictionary, a calculator, something like that. Stay in contact with family and friends. So, in case there is an emergency, they need to call their mum or dad or something like that. So again, 2 very, very specific answers. And it probably would take one of my VIP students 30 seconds to think about for that. So they have got ideas quickly. These ideas are relevant. These ideas are specific. And they've done it in 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, something like that. That leaves you a huge amount of time to finish your planning and then move on to getting your essay done. All right, instead of spending 10 minutes worrying about your ideas and then starting writing, and then halfway through you change your ideas and you delete it and you've failed by that stage. All right, my whole thing is I try and get people to analyze the question properly and think of ideas very, very quickly so they can move on to writing a great essay. So stop brainstorming, mind mapping, or anything that takes too much time or leads to irrelevant ideas. All right, just stop doing it. You might think that this is too simple, but believe me, it does work. It has helped hundreds of my students get band 7, 8, and 9, and it has changed so many people's whole approach to writing. It's really, really important. Ask yourself just direct questions. All right, why would I agree with this? Why would I disagree with this? And get out of your own way. Getting out of your own way means it is simple, so stop making it more complicated than it needs to be. For many students, this is the main reason why they're failing to get band 7, 8, or 9. They're making the test more complicated than it needs to be. What I say to my students over and over again is, like, IELTS is a very, very simple test, overcomplicated by students. It is far simpler than you believe it is. So get out of your own way, do the simple things correctly, and you will see that your marks really, really improve. Okay, so here is challenge number 2. Look at the question below and think of 2 reasons why you would agree and 2 reasons why you would disagree. Now, in the real test, you would be just thinking of 2 reasons why you agree or 2 reasons why you disagree. If that is confusing, go and look at lesson 1 again. Think about the structure that we gave you. But because we're just practicing, I want you to practice thinking of ideas. So I want you to both agree and disagree. You're not going to do that in the real essay, but I want you to do it for the practice. So parents should spend more time with their children, helping them with their homework. Do you agree or disagree? So what I want you to do, very simply, is pick agree and think of 2 reasons why you would agree with that. And then disagree, think of 2 reasons why you would disagree with that. And post it below this video, okay? And I'll be looking at all of your ideas and I hope to comment on them, as many of them as I can. Okay, thank you very much. So you've made it to the end of lesson 2. Make sure you do that challenge. Again, the reason why I want you to do the challenges is just consuming content, you will remember 20% of it. But if you do the challenge and you activate that knowledge, you are far more likely to remember more of it and to do it in the real test. All right, see you again for lesson number 3, where we're going to work on how to write an effective introduction. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.